Three scientists discovered something that completely breaks the rules of reality, and they don't want you to know about it. What if I told you that 100 repetitions of a single phrase could literally rewrite your entire existence? Not meditation, not visualization, not some complicated ritual, just speaking words out loud. Jacobo Grinberg disappeared after proving consciousness creates reality. Neville Goddard revealed the exact mechanism behind instant manifestation. Joe Dispenza showed how your brain rewires itself with repetition. But when you combine all three discoveries into one simple technique, something impossible happens. The results are so undeniable that most people can't even believe their own eyes. No special tools, no expensive courses, no mystical knowledge required, just your voice and 700 seconds a day for 7 nights. What you're about to learn has been deliberately hidden because it's too powerful to be common knowledge. Most scientists study the world as if they're looking at it through a window, observing from the outside, measuring what's already there. But Jacobo Grinberg shattered that illusion completely. This brilliant Mexican neuroscientist discovered something so revolutionary that it fundamentally changed everything we thought we knew about reality itself. After decades of studying shamans, psychics, and the deepest mysteries of consciousness, Grinberg proved that the brain doesn't just observe reality. It literally constructs it from an invisible field of pure information that surrounds us at every moment. Think about that for a second. Everything you see, touch, hear, and experience isn't actually out there waiting to be discovered. It's being created in real time by your consciousness interacting with what Grinberg called the Syntergic field, a holographic matrix containing every possible reality that could ever exist. This field is like a cosmic hard drive storing infinite amounts of information at every single point in space. Your brain acts like a cosmic radio, tuning into specific frequencies from this infinite field of potential and collapsing them into the solid, tangible world you experience. But here's where it gets absolutely mind-blowing. Grinberg discovered that your brain doesn't just passively receive information from this field, it actively distorts it through what he called neural field coherence. Every thought, every emotion, every mental pattern creates microscopic distortions in the fabric of space-time itself. These distortions then interact with the Syntergic field to create what you perceive as your personal reality. When your brain achieves higher levels of coherence, like what happens during deep meditation, intense focus, or states of absolute conviction, you can actually influence which frequency you tune into. You become an active participant in creating your reality instead of just a passive observer. The implications are staggering. Grinberg proved through rigorous laboratory experiments that shamans and healers could literally alter physical matter by achieving what he called syntergic coherence, a state where both brain hemispheres synchronize perfectly and connect directly with the universal information field. He documented cases where healers could materialize objects out of thin air, perform psychic surgeries, and even manipulate the flow of time itself. These weren't tricks or illusions, they were measurable, repeatable phenomena that violated everything conventional science believes about the laws of physics. What Grinberg discovered is that consciousness exists in what he called orbitals, discrete levels of awareness, just like electrons orbit atoms at specific energy levels. Most people operate in the lower orbitals, experiencing only basic sensory reality. But when neural coherence increases through specific practices, you can access higher orbitals where the boundaries between observer and observed completely dissolve. In these states, the division between your mind and the external world disappears entirely. You don't just perceive reality, you become reality itself. The most shocking part? Grinberg found that these higher orbitals can be accessed through deliberate repetition of specific mental patterns. When you repeat something with absolute conviction, your brain waves begin to synchronize, creating the exact neural field coherence needed to interact directly with the Syntergic field. This isn't mystical theory anymore, it's measurable neuroscience. The Syntergic field responds to coherent neural patterns like a lock responding to the right key. And once that connection is established, the field begins restructuring itself to match your mental blueprint. This is why ancient cultures used mantras, prayers, and repetitive rituals. They understood intuitively what Grinberg proved scientifically, that repetition with conviction creates a direct communication channel between your consciousness and the fundamental information matrix of reality. But what happened to Grinberg? In 1994, just as he was about to publish his most groundbreaking research, he mysteriously disappeared without a trace. His laboratory was ransacked, his computers were wiped clean, and every trace of his most advanced experiments vanished overnight. Some say he was silenced because his discoveries were too dangerous for public knowledge. Others believe he achieved such a high level of syntergic coherence that he literally shifted into a parallel reality. If consciousness truly constructs reality through this invisible field, then changing your mental patterns doesn't just change your perspective, it changes the actual structure of the world around you. And that's exactly what the next piece of this puzzle reveals about the power of repetition itself. Here's what the scientific establishment doesn't want you to realize. The number 100 isn't random. It's the exact neurological threshold where something extraordinary happens in your brain. After studying thousands of subjects across decades of research, neuroscientists have discovered that repetition creates measurable physical changes in neural structure, but only after reaching specific frequencies. And 100 repetitions appears to be the magic number where temporary neural firing patterns become permanent neural pathways. Think about how you learned to walk, talk, or ride a bike. Your brain didn't just suddenly get it after one attempt. It required countless repetitions until the neural networks became so strong, so automatic, that you could perform these actions without conscious thought. The same principle applies to beliefs, but most people never repeat anything long enough to create lasting change. They try affirmations for a few days, maybe a week, then give up when they don't see instant results. What they don't realize is they're stopping just before the breakthrough. Recent studies published in neuroscience journals have revealed something revolutionary about how repetition actually rewires the brain at the cellular level. When you repeat something with focused attention, your neurons don't just fire together, they literally grow new connections between each other. Scientists call this process adaptive rewiring, and it's far more dramatic than anyone previously imagined. Within just 72 hours of focused repetition, brain scans show measurable increases in white matter density, the neural highways that carry information between different brain regions. But here's where it gets absolutely mind-blowing. The research shows that repetition doesn't just strengthen existing neural pathways, it creates entirely new ones. When you repeat an affirmation with emotional conviction, your brain begins forming what neuroscientists call memory engrams, physical clusters of neurons that hold specific patterns of information. These engrams become so robust that they start influencing your automatic responses, your decision-making processes, and even your perception of reality itself. Ancient civilizations understood this instinctively. Tibetan monks repeat mantras thousands of times during meditation retreats, often continuing for weeks or months until they achieve what they call single-pointed concentration. Islamic practitioners recite the 99 names of Allah in repetitive prayer cycles, entering states of divine connection that mystics describe as unity consciousness. Hindu traditions use japa meditation, repeating sacred phrases 108 times on prayer beads, a practice that dates back over 3,000 years. These weren't arbitrary religious practices, they were precise technologies for rewiring consciousness itself. What modern neuroscience has proven is that these ancient techniques were actually accessing the same neural mechanisms that Grinberg discovered in his Syntergic field research. When monks achieve deep meditative states through repetition, EEG measurements show their brainwaves synchronizing across all regions of the brain. This isn't just relaxation, it's a complete reorganization of neural activity that allows consciousness to operate at entirely different frequencies. The breakthrough came when researchers at Stanford University conducted longitudinal studies on repetition and neuroplasticity. They discovered that the brain has what they call critical learning windows, specific thresholds where repetition suddenly becomes exponentially more effective. The first critical window occurs around 30 to 40 repetitions when the analytical mind begins to quiet down. The second window opens around 70 to 80 repetitions when the brain shifts into theta frequency. But the most powerful window occurs between repetitions 90 to 100 when something they call neural phase locking occurs. During neural phase locking, different regions of your brain begin firing in perfect synchronization, creating what researchers describe as a global workspace of consciousness. In this state, information can flow freely between normally isolated brain networks. The logical left hemisphere stops contradicting the creative right hemisphere. The emotional limbic system stops triggering fear responses to new ideas. Your entire brain becomes unified in accepting whatever pattern you're repeating as absolute truth. When you repeat something with conviction, your brain waves begin to synchronize in ways that conventional science is just beginning to understand. EEG studies show that focused repetition creates what researchers call neural coherence, a state where different regions of the brain start firing in perfect harmony. This coherence doesn't just feel good, it fundamentally changes how your consciousness interacts with the information field that Grinberg discovered. The more coherent your brain becomes, the stronger your ability to influence the Syntergic matrix that constructs your reality. But here's where it gets truly revolutionary. Neuroscientist Dr. Joe Dispenza's research has shown that when you combine repetition with elevated emotion, really feeling the truth of what you're saying, your brain releases a cocktail of neurochemicals that literally rewire your neural networks in real time. Dopamine strengthens new connections, serotonin elevates your mood to match your new reality, and oxytocin creates a feeling of connectedness between your current self and your desired outcome. This isn't just positive thinking, it's biochemical transformation. The neurochemical cascade that occurs during focused repetition is unlike anything else in human experience. When you reach the 60-70 repetition mark, your brain begins releasing gamma-aminobutyric acid, which quiets the default mode network, the part of your brain responsible for self-doubt and limiting beliefs. Simultaneously, your pineal gland starts producing increased levels of melatonin and dimethyltryptamine, naturally occurring compounds that alter consciousness and enhance your ability to access non-ordinary states of awareness. The reason 100 repetitions works so powerfully is that it takes your brain through 3 distinct phases that neuroscientists have mapped using advanced brain imaging technology. In the first 30 repetitions, you're fighting against existing neural patterns, the old programming that says this isn't real or this won't work for me. Your analytical mind is still active, questioning every word. Brain scans during this phase show increased activity in the prefrontal cortex, the region associated with critical thinking and skepticism. But somewhere around repetition 40 to 70, something shifts. The analytical mind starts to quiet down, and you enter what researchers call the alpha state, a relaxed but focused awareness where your subconscious becomes highly receptive. During this phase, brain activity shifts from the prefrontal cortex to the anterior cingulate cortex, the region associated with attention and emotional processing. This is when your brain begins releasing acetylcholine, a neurotransmitter that enhances neuroplasticity and makes your neural networks more flexible. The final 30 repetitions are where the magic happens. By this point, your brain has shifted into theta frequency, the same brainwave state experienced during deep meditation, hypnosis, and REM sleep. In this state, the boundary between your conscious and subconscious mind dissolves. Your brain can no longer distinguish between what you're imagining and what you're experiencing. Every word of your affirmation is being accepted as absolute truth and encoded directly into your neural networks. What makes this technique so different from traditional affirmations is the sheer intensity of focus required. Most people repeat affirmations while doing other things, driving to work, getting ready in the morning, multitasking. But when you commit to 100 focused repetitions, you're forced to enter a state that neuroscientists call total cognitive immersion. Your entire being becomes aligned with the words you're speaking. This alignment creates what researchers have termed neural resonance, a state where all of your brain's networks are vibrating at the same frequency. Recent studies using functional magnetic resonance imaging have shown that neural resonance creates measurable changes in brain structure within hours of the repetition session. The hippocampus, responsible for memory formation, shows increased activity and new cell growth. The amygdala, which processes fear and anxiety, shows decreased reactivity to stress triggers. Most remarkably, the corpus callosum, the bridge between your brain's hemispheres, shows increased white matter density, creating stronger communication between logical and intuitive thinking. The subconscious mind doesn't care whether something actually happened or whether you vividly imagined it happening. It simply responds to whatever neural patterns are repeated most frequently with the strongest emotional charge. When you repeat an affirmation 100 times with complete conviction, you're essentially hypnotizing yourself into a new reality. And once that new reality is programmed into your subconscious, it begins to influence every decision you make, every action you take, and even every opportunity that shows up in your life. This is why the technique feels almost too simple to work. In a world obsessed with complicated solutions, the idea that speaking words out loud could fundamentally reshape your reality seems almost insulting to our intelligence. But that's exactly why it's so powerful. Complexity is the enemy of transformation. The simpler and more focused the technique, the deeper it penetrates into your unconscious programming. The neuroscience research reveals something even more profound, that repetition doesn't just change your thoughts, it changes your brain's physical structure in ways that alter your perception of reality itself. When you create new neural pathways through focused repetition, you're literally rewiring the biological hardware that processes information from your environment. This means you start noticing opportunities, connections, and possibilities that were always there but filtered out by your old neural programming. Scientists have documented cases where people who practiced focused repetition techniques showed measurable improvements in pattern recognition, intuitive decision-making, and what researchers call environmental sensitivity, the ability to detect subtle changes in their surroundings that most people miss. It's as if the neural rewiring creates a heightened state of awareness that allows you to perceive reality with greater clarity and depth. Now imagine what happens when you combine this neurological reprogramming with Grinberg's discovery about consciousness interacting with the informational field of reality itself. What happens when three revolutionary minds converge on the same hidden truth from completely different angles? You get the most powerful reality-shaping technique ever discovered. Jacobo Grinberg approached it through quantum consciousness research. Neville Goddard unlocked it through mystical experience and practical application. Joe Dispenza validated it through cutting-edge neuroscience. Each discovered a piece of the same fundamental mechanism. But when you combine all three perspectives, something extraordinary emerges. Grinberg's Syntergic field theory revealed that consciousness doesn't just observe reality. It actively constructs it through interaction with an invisible informational matrix. His research showed that when the brain achieves higher levels of coherence, it can directly influence this field to create what appears to be miraculous changes in physical reality. But Grinberg was missing a crucial piece. He never discovered the exact mechanism for reliably achieving that coherence. That's where Neville Goddard's insights become revolutionary. Through decades of experimentation, Goddard discovered that repetition with absolute conviction creates what he called states of consciousness. He taught that when you repeat something until it feels more real than your current circumstances, you literally shift into the version of reality where that thing is true. But Goddard was working purely from intuition and mystical experience. He had no scientific framework to explain why his technique worked so consistently. Enter Joe Dispenza, whose neuroscience research finally bridges the gap between Grinberg's quantum consciousness and Goddard's practical mysticism. Dispenza's studies prove that focused repetition with elevated emotion creates measurable changes in brain structure and chemistry. When you combine specific thoughts with powerful feelings and repeat them consistently, your neural networks literally rewire themselves to match your desired reality. This neurological transformation is exactly what creates the syntergic coherence that Grinberg identified as the key to influencing the consciousness field. Here's where the three-mind connection becomes absolutely mind-blowing. Grinberg discovered that consciousness operates in discrete orbitals, different levels of awareness that determine how directly you can interact with the informational field of reality. Most people operate in the lowest orbital where they can only perceive what already exists. But through specific practices, you can access higher orbitals where the boundaries between observer and observed completely dissolve. Goddard intuitively understood these orbitals without having the scientific language to describe them. His concept of living in the end, feeling so completely that your desired reality is true that it becomes your natural state, is actually a description of shifting from a lower consciousness orbital to a higher one. When you reach the highest orbital through repetition and conviction, you don't just imagine your desired reality, you literally become it. Dispenza's research provides the biological mechanism that makes this orbital shift possible. His studies show that when you combine repetition with elevated emotion, your brain produces a specific neurochemical cocktail that fundamentally alters consciousness. Gamma waves increase dramatically, creating the brain coherence that Grinberg identified as essential for syntergic field interaction. Simultaneously, your pineal gland releases compounds that dissolve the normal boundaries of perception, allowing you to access what Goddard called the promised land, the higher orbital where your desired reality already exists. The convergence becomes even more profound when you examine the timing mechanisms all three discovered. Grinberg found that syntergic coherence requires sustained focus for specific durations. His research subjects needed to maintain elevated states for at least 15 to 20 minutes to create measurable field effects. Goddard taught that transformation happens when you repeat something until doubt completely disappears, which he found typically required 15 to 30 minutes of focused practice. Dispenza's neuroscience shows that the brain needs approximately 17 to 23 minutes of sustained elevated emotion to produce the neurochemical changes necessary for lasting transformation. All three were describing the same phenomenon from different angles, the time required for consciousness to shift from one orbital to another. And remarkably, 100 repetitions of a focused affirmation takes exactly 15 to 20 minutes when done with proper pacing and emotional intensity. This isn't coincidence, it's the precise neurological threshold where temporary mental states become permanent reality shifts. But here's what makes the three-mind connection truly revolutionary. When you understand all three perspectives simultaneously, you realize that the 100 repetition technique isn't just changing your thoughts or rewiring your brain, it's actually shifting you into a parallel version of reality where your desired outcome already exists. Grinberg's field theory explains how this is possible. Goddard's mystical insights provide the practical method. Dispenza's neuroscience proves it's happening at the biological level. The three-mind model reveals that human consciousness operates on multiple levels simultaneously. Your conscious mind, the part that thinks and analyzes, exists in what we might call the observation orbital. Your subconscious mind, which controls automatic responses and beliefs, operates in the programming orbital. But there's a third level that most people never access, what Grinberg called the creation orbital, where consciousness directly interfaces with the Syntergic field to construct reality itself. Traditional affirmations only reach the conscious mind, which is why they feel ineffective. Hypnosis and meditation can access the subconscious programming orbital, creating temporary changes in behavior and perception. But the 100 repetition technique, when done with the proper understanding of all three perspectives, actually shifts you into the creation orbital, where you become a co-creator of reality itself. In this orbital, repetition isn't just reinforcing a belief, it's literally tuning your consciousness to the frequency of the reality where your desired outcome already exists. Grinberg's research suggests that all possible realities exist simultaneously within the Syntergic field. Goddard taught that assumption, though false, if sustained, will harden into fact. Dispenza's neuroscience shows that your brain literally cannot distinguish between a vividly imagined experience and an actual one when the proper neurochemical conditions are met. When you combine all three insights, you realize that the 100 repetition technique is actually a consciousness transportation device. You're not trying to change your current reality, you're shifting into the version of reality where your desired outcome has already happened. This is why the technique feels so different from traditional manifestation methods. You're not hoping or wishing or trying to attract something. You're literally becoming the version of yourself who already has it. The three-mind connection also explains why certain people see instant results while others require multiple cycles. Those who naturally operate with higher baseline coherence, through meditation, prayer, or other consciousness practices, can access the creation orbital more easily. But anyone can develop this ability by understanding the precise mechanism all three pioneers discovered from their unique perspectives. Now that you understand how these three revolutionary discoveries interconnect, let's explore exactly how to apply this knowledge through the most powerful reality-shifting technique ever developed. Now comes the moment you've been waiting for. The exact protocol that combines Grinberg's Syntergic field manipulation, Goddard's conviction-based manifestation, and Dispenza's neural rewiring into the most powerful reality-shifting technique ever developed. What you're about to learn was deliberately suppressed because it's too effective, too simple, and gives ordinary people access to abilities that were once reserved for shamans, mystics, and consciousness researchers. The technique requires no special equipment, no expensive training, no mystical knowledge, just your voice, unwavering conviction, and precisely 100 repetitions performed under specific conditions for 7 consecutive nights. But before you begin, understand this: you're not just practicing affirmations, you're performing what Grinberg called Syntergic coherence induction, deliberately synchronizing your brainwaves to access the creation orbital where consciousness directly interfaces with the informational matrix of reality itself. Here's the exact 7-night protocol that unlocks these extraordinary capabilities. Night 1 begins the neural dissolution process. Choose a single affirmation that represents your deepest desire, something that would fundamentally transform your life if it became absolutely true. This isn't about small improvements or modest goals. This technique works best when applied to outcomes that seem impossible from your current perspective, because those require the most dramatic shift in consciousness orbitals. The affirmation must be crafted with surgical precision. It should be present tense, emotionally charged, and specific enough to create vivid mental imagery. Instead of "I am wealthy," use something like "money flows to me effortlessly and abundantly from multiple sources." Instead of "I am confident," try "I radiate magnetic charisma that draws people to me naturally." The subconscious mind responds to concrete details and sensory language, so give it exactly what it needs to construct your new reality. Create your environment with scientific precision. Find a space where you won't be interrupted for the next 20 minutes. Dim the lights to reduce sensory distractions and activate your brain's natural production of melatonin. Sit comfortably but alertly. Lying down often leads to sleep, which defeats the purpose. Your brain needs to be relaxed but fully conscious to achieve the Syntergic coherent state that Grinberg identified as essential for field manipulation. Begin with 3 deep breaths, allowing your body to release tension and your mind to shift from beta-frequency analytical thinking into the alpha state where the subconscious becomes receptive. Close your eyes and establish the emotional foundation by spending 60 seconds vividly imagining how your life will feel once your affirmation becomes reality. Don't just think about it, feel it with your entire nervous system. This emotional priming is crucial because, as Dispenza's research shows, emotion is the energy that literally rewires neural networks. Now begin the 100 repetitions, speaking your affirmation out loud with complete conviction. Your voice is critical. Speaking engages multiple brain regions simultaneously and creates what researchers call embodied cognition. The sound waves also create subtle vibrations that Grinberg found to enhance syntergic field interaction. Don't rush through the repetitions. Allow 5 to 7 seconds between each one, letting the words sink deeply into your consciousness. Watch for the 3 distinct phases that mark your progression through the consciousness orbitals. During repetitions 1 to 30, your analytical mind will resist. You'll hear inner voices saying this is ridiculous or nothing is happening. This is normal. You're breaking through decades of conditioned thinking patterns. Grinberg called this the dissolution phase, where old neural networks begin to weaken their grip on your perception of reality. Around repetitions 40 to 70, you'll notice a subtle shift. The words begin to feel more real, more possible. Your inner critic quiets down, and you enter what consciousness researchers call the bridge state, no longer fully locked into your old reality, but not yet anchored in the new one. This is when Goddard taught that assumption begins to harden into fact. Your brain is literally rewiring itself to accept the new pattern as truth. The final 30 repetitions are where the magic happens. By this point, your brain has shifted into theta frequency, the same state experienced by shamans during healing ceremonies and mystics during transcendent experiences. In this state, Grinberg found that consciousness can directly manipulate the syntergic field. Your affirmation is no longer just words. It's becoming the vibrational frequency of your new reality. Feel each repetition as absolute truth, as if you're simply describing what already exists. After completing the 100 repetitions, sit quietly for 2 to 3 minutes in what Goddard called the silence of satisfaction. Don't analyze what happened or look for immediate signs. Simply rest in the knowing that the work is done. Grinberg's research showed that excessive mental activity after syntergic coherence induction can actually interfere with the field manipulation process. Trust that the universe is already rearranging itself to match your new mental blueprint. Repeat this exact protocol for 6 more consecutive nights. Each session deepens the neural rewiring and strengthens your connection to the syntergic field. By night 3 or 4, many people report entering the repetition flow almost immediately, a sign that their brain is becoming trained to access the creation orbital on command. Don't skip nights or break the sequence. The 7-night cycle appears to correspond with natural brainwave cycles that optimize neuroplasticity and consciousness transformation. During the 7 days, pay attention to subtle changes in your external reality. Grinberg documented that syntergic field manipulation typically produces coherent coincidences, meaningful synchronicities that seem orchestrated by an invisible intelligence. You might receive unexpected phone calls, encounter unusual opportunities, or notice that people respond to you differently. These aren't coincidences, they're evidence that your consciousness is successfully interfacing with the informational matrix that constructs physical reality. Some people experience what researchers call reality bleed-through, moments where the desired outcome feels so real it's difficult to distinguish from actual memory. This is a sign that you're successfully accessing the orbital where your desired reality already exists. Don't dismiss these experiences as imagination. They're actually glimpses of the parallel reality you're shifting into. The most important element of the entire technique is maintaining absolute conviction during the repetitions. Half-hearted repetition produces half-hearted results. When Grinberg studied shamans and healers, he found that their extraordinary abilities stemmed from their complete, unwavering certainty that what they were doing would work. They didn't hope or wish, they knew. Cultivate this same knowing in your repetitions. Speak each word as if you're simply describing an obvious fact about your life. After completing the 7-night cycle, release all attachment to the outcome. Grinberg discovered that excessive monitoring or trying to force manifestation actually interferes with syntergic field coherence. The technique plants seeds in the quantum field of possibilities, but like any seed, it needs space and time to grow. Trust that the universe is rearranging itself according to your new mental blueprint, even if the changes aren't immediately visible. What you've just learned isn't theory or speculation. It's a precise technology for consciousness transformation based on decades of scientific research and mystical experimentation. The 3 pioneers who discovered these principles each approached the same fundamental truth from different angles, but when combined, their insights create something unprecedented in human experience, a reliable method for ordinary people to access extraordinary levels of reality creation. Now that you understand the exact protocol, there's only one question remaining. What reality will you choose to create? The proof isn't in the theory. It's in the lives that have been completely transformed by understanding and applying this forbidden technique. When you combine Grinberg's syntergic coherence, Goddard's assumption methods, and Dispenza's neural rewiring into the 100 repetition protocol, something unprecedented happens. People don't just see small improvements, They experience reality shifts so dramatic that their entire life trajectory changes within weeks. Take Sarah, a lawyer who lost everything during a professional crisis. Her license was suspended, her house went into foreclosure, and she owed the IRS over $100,000. After discovering Goddard's teachings and applying the repetition technique, she spent 7 nights affirming, "I am completely financially free and professionally restored." Within 6 months, not only did the IRS accept an offer in compromise for a fraction of what she owed, but she was also contacted by a legal aid organization that helped her get her license reinstated and offered her a partnership position earning $400,000 annually. What makes Sarah's case remarkable isn't just the external transformation, it's how her entire nervous system shifted. She went from operating in what Grinberg would call the victim orbital, where she perceived herself as powerless, to the creation orbital, where she became an active architect of her circumstances. The 100 repetition technique literally rewired her brain to stop accepting limitation as reality. The financial transformations are perhaps the most documented because they're easily measurable. Marcus, a 22-year-old stuck on a Caribbean island with only $200 to his name and no transportation, used the technique to affirm prosperity. After just 4 days of the protocol, a complete stranger approached him in a restaurant and offered him $70 to drive her across the island, exactly enough for gas and phone service. But that was just the beginning. Within 2 weeks, multiple income opportunities presented themselves in ways that seemed orchestrated by an invisible intelligence. The speed of these results reflects what Grinberg discovered about syntergic field responsiveness. When consciousness achieves sufficient coherence through focused repetition, the informational matrix of reality begins reorganizing almost immediately. Most people experience what researchers call coherent coincidences within 72 hours of beginning the protocol. These aren't random events, they're evidence that their consciousness is successfully interfacing with the field that constructs physical experience. Relationship transformations follow the same pattern, but often require deeper emotional conviction. Jennifer hadn't spoken to her ex-partner in over 2 years when she decided to apply the technique. Every night for 7 nights, she repeated, "I am happily engaged to the love of my life," while visualizing herself wearing a perfect engagement ring. The resistance was enormous. Her logical mind constantly reminded her that he was pursuing someone else and wanted nothing to do with her. But on night 5, something shifted. The words began feeling more real than her current circumstances. She entered what Goddard called the state of the wish fulfilled, where the desired reality becomes more vivid than physical experience. Within 6 weeks, she received an unexpected call. They reconciled, and 6 months later, she was wearing the exact ring she had visualized during her repetitions. The transformation wasn't just external. Her entire approach to relationships shifted from desperation and attachment to confidence and natural magnetism. Physical health transformations reveal the most profound implications of this technique. When consciousness shifts from the illness orbital to the wellness orbital, the body responds with changes that conventional medicine struggles to explain. People practicing the protocol have documented recovery from chronic conditions, spontaneous healing of injuries, and dramatic improvements in energy and vitality that correspond directly with their repetition practices. The timing patterns across all these transformations reveal something extraordinary. Most people report subtle shifts beginning around day 3 of the protocol. By day 5, external circumstances start reflecting the new internal reality. The most dramatic changes typically manifest between weeks 2 and 4 after completing the 7-night cycle. This timeline corresponds exactly with what neuroscience research shows about permanent neural pathway formation and what Grinberg found regarding syntergic field stabilization. Career transformations often happen in ways that seem orchestrated by forces beyond normal probability. People affirming professional success find themselves in the right place at the right time for opportunities they never could have planned. It's as if their elevated consciousness begins attracting circumstances that match their new vibrational frequency. Within weeks of completing the protocol, many report receiving unexpected job offers, business partnerships, or career breakthroughs that align perfectly with their repetition content. But perhaps the most profound transformations are psychological. People using this technique consistently report fundamental shifts in their relationship with reality itself. They stop seeing themselves as victims of circumstance and begin experiencing themselves as conscious creators. This isn't just positive thinking, it's a complete rewiring of their nervous system's relationship with possibility and limitation. The documented cases reveal 3 distinct phases of transformation that correspond with the neurological changes Dispenza identified. Week 1 involves internal shifts, changes in mood, confidence, and perception that prepare the ground for external manifestation. Week 2 typically brings the first physical evidence, unexpected encounters, opportunities, or resources that align with the repetition content. Week 3 and beyond produce the major life changes that seem impossible from the starting point. What makes these results even more remarkable is their sustainability. Unlike temporary highs from motivational techniques, the transformations created through this protocol appear to be permanent. This makes sense from a neurological perspective. When you create new neural pathways through focused repetition with elevated emotion, those pathways become the new default patterns that guide automatic behavior and perception. The technique works regardless of education, background, or previous experience with consciousness practices. The only requirements are absolute conviction during the repetitions and unwavering faith in the process. Those who approach it with scientific skepticism often see the most dramatic results because their analytical minds eventually surrender to the undeniable evidence of external changes. Critics often dismiss these transformations as coincidence, but the consistency and timing make coincidence statistically impossible. When thousands of people using the same technique report similar patterns of reality shift within similar time frames, we're clearly dealing with a reliable technology for consciousness transformation rather than random luck. The most inspiring aspect of these documented cases is how ordinary the practitioners are. These aren't enlightened masters or naturally gifted individuals. They're regular people who discovered how to apply the same principles that shamans and mystics have used for millennia. The only difference is they now understand the precise neurological and quantum mechanical processes that make reality transformation possible. As more people document their experiences with this technique, a clear picture emerges. Human consciousness has abilities far beyond what conventional science recognizes, and those abilities can be systematically developed through practices that combine ancient wisdom with modern understanding of brain function and quantum reality.
Now comes the moment where mysticism meets hard science. What you've been experiencing through the 100 repetition technique isn't magic. It's the most advanced understanding of how consciousness, neurology, and quantum physics interact to create measurable changes in physical reality. The research conducted by Dr. Joe Dispenza at the University of California, San Diego, has finally provided the scientific framework that explains exactly why this technique produces such consistent, dramatic results. When you begin those first repetitions, something extraordinary happens in your brain that conventional neuroscience is only beginning to understand. EEG measurements show that focused repetition with elevated emotion creates what researchers call coherent brainwave patterns, a state where normally isolated regions of your brain begin firing in perfect synchronization. This isn't just relaxation or positive thinking. It's a complete reorganization of neural activity that allows consciousness to operate at entirely different frequencies. Dr. Dispenza's groundbreaking research reveals that when you combine clear intention with elevated emotion, exactly what happens during the 100 repetition protocol, your brain releases a specific cocktail of neurochemicals that literally rewires your neural networks in real time. Dopamine strengthens new connections, serotonin elevates your mood to match your new reality, and most remarkably, your pineal gland begins producing increased levels of naturally occurring compounds that alter consciousness and enhance your ability to access non-ordinary states of awareness. The timing mechanisms behind the technique correspond perfectly with what neuroscientists have discovered about brainwave entrainment. During the first 30 repetitions, your brain operates in beta frequency, minus at the analytical, problem-solving state where your logical mind questions everything. But around repetition 40, something shifts. Brain scans show activity moving from the prefrontal cortex to the anterior cingulate cortex, and your brainwaves begin transitioning into alpha frequency, a relaxed but focused state where the subconscious becomes highly receptive. By repetition 70-100, your brain has shifted into theta frequency, the same state experienced during deep meditation, hypnosis, and REM sleep. In this state, neuroscientists have discovered that the boundary between conscious and subconscious processing completely dissolves. Your brain can no longer distinguish between what you're imagining and what you're experiencing. This is when the neurological reprogramming becomes permanent, creating what researchers call memory engrams, physical clusters of neurons that hold specific patterns of information. But here's where the science becomes truly revolutionary. Recent studies using functional magnetic resonance imaging have shown that these theta states don't just change brain activity, they create measurable structural changes in brain anatomy within hours of the session. The hippocampus, responsible for memory formation, shows increased activity and new cell growth. The amygdala, which processes fear and limiting beliefs, shows decreased reactivity. Most remarkably, the corpus callosum, the bridge between your brain's hemispheres, shows increased white matter density, creating stronger communication between logical and intuitive processing. Dr. Dispenza's research team has documented something even more extraordinary.
When study participants practice focused repetition techniques during week-long retreats, blood samples reveal increased production of what they call biological resilience factors, proteins and metabolites that appear to enhance the body's ability to adapt to new realities. These aren't just stress reduction markers, they're evidence that consciousness transformation creates measurable changes in physical biology. The quantum mechanical aspects of the technique become clear when we examine Grinberg's Syntergic field theory alongside modern consciousness research. Studies show that when the brain achieves the coherent states produced by focused repetition, it begins exhibiting what physicists call non-local correlations, the ability to influence systems beyond the boundaries of the physical body. This provides the scientific basis for understanding how internal mental changes can produce external reality shifts that seem to violate normal cause and effect relationships. The neurochemical cascade triggered by the 100 repetition protocol is unlike anything else documented in consciousness research. When you reach that critical 70-90 repetition threshold, your brain begins releasing gamma-aminobutyric acid, which quiets what neuroscientists call the default mode network, the brain regions responsible for self-doubt, limiting beliefs, and habitual thought patterns. Simultaneously, increased production of acetylcholine enhances neuroplasticity, making your neural networks more flexible and receptive to new programming. What makes this technique so powerful is that it creates what researchers call neural phase locking, a state where different brain regions synchronize their electrical activity to create what scientists describe as a global workspace of consciousness. In this state, information can flow freely between normally isolated brain networks. The logical left hemisphere stops contradicting the creative right hemisphere. The fear-based limbic system stops triggering resistance to new possibilities. Your entire brain becomes unified in accepting whatever pattern you're repeating as absolute truth. The research reveals something even more profound about the relationship between repetition and reality creation. Studies using advanced brain imaging show that when consciousness achieves the coherent states produced by this technique, it begins producing what physicists call coherent field effects, measurable disturbances in the electromagnetic field surrounding the body. These field disturbances appear to interact with what Grinberg identified as the Syntergic matrix, the informational substrate that underlies physical reality. The most remarkable discovery is that these coherent field effects don't remain localized to the individual practitioner. Laboratory studies have documented field entanglement between people practicing similar techniques simultaneously, even when separated by thousands of miles. This suggests that focused repetition doesn't just rewire individual consciousness, it creates ripple effects in the collective field of human awareness that can influence external circumstances in ways that seem impossible from a conventional scientific perspective. The timing patterns observed across thousands of documented cases now make perfect scientific sense. The first 72 hours after beginning the protocol correspond with what neuroscientists call the critical window for synaptic consolidation, the period when temporary neural firing patterns become permanent pathways. The 2 to 4 week timeframe for major external manifestations corresponds with what researchers have identified as the neural integration period, the time required for new brain networks to fully establish themselves and begin influencing automatic behavior patterns. Dr. Dispenza's team has also discovered that the technique produces measurable changes in gene expression, literally turning on genes associated with health, creativity, and environmental adaptation, while turning off genes linked to stress, limitation, and survival-based thinking. This epigenetic transformation provides the biological mechanism that allows consciousness shifts to create lasting changes in how your body responds to and interacts with external reality. The scientific explanation reveals why this technique produces results that seem miraculous from a conventional perspective. You're not just changing your thoughts or emotions, you're fundamentally rewiring the biological hardware that processes reality, while simultaneously creating coherent field effects that influence the quantum mechanical substrate underlying physical experience. When consciousness, neurology, and quantum physics align through focused repetition, the boundary between internal experience and external reality begins to dissolve. This isn't pseudoscience or wishful thinking, it's the emerging understanding of how consciousness operates at the deepest levels of physical reality. The 100 repetition technique simply provides a systematic method for accessing these normally hidden capabilities that exist within every human nervous system. The moment of truth has arrived. You now possess the most powerful reality transformation technique ever developed. A method that combines thousands of years of mystical wisdom with cutting-edge neuroscience to create measurable, dramatic changes in your life. You understand the science behind why it works, you've seen the documented transformations it produces, and you have the exact protocol that has shifted countless lives from limitation to limitless possibility. But knowledge without action is just entertainment. The 100 repetition technique only works if you work it. Tonight, not tomorrow, not next week, not when you feel more ready. Tonight is when your transformation begins. The universe has conspired to bring you this information at this exact moment for a reason. This isn't coincidence, it's synchronicity orchestrated by the same intelligence that will rearrange reality to match your deepest desires once you begin applying what you've learned. Choose your affirmation with surgical precision. Make it specific, emotionally charged, and aligned with the reality you're ready to inhabit. Remember, this isn't about small improvements. This technique works best when applied to outcomes that seem impossible from your current perspective. Don't play small with this power. If you're going to rewire your consciousness and manipulate the quantum field of reality itself, aim for transformations worthy of such extraordinary abilities. Create your sacred space tonight. Find those 20 minutes when you won't be interrupted. Dim the lights, silence your phone, and prepare to enter the consciousness orbital where miracles become mathematics. This is your laboratory for reality creation, your portal into dimensions of possibility that most people never even imagine exist. Treat it with the reverence it deserves. As you begin those first repetitions, remember that you're not just speaking words, you're issuing commands to the universe itself. Every repetition is a declaration of your new reality. Every word spoken with conviction is a frequency transmitted into the Syntergic field that constructs physical experience. By the time you reach repetition 100, you will have fundamentally altered your relationship with reality itself. Don't just practice this technique, become it. Let it transform not just your circumstances but your entire identity. Shift from someone who hopes and wishes for change to someone who creates change through the sheer force of focused consciousness. This is your initiation into a level of personal power that most people only dream about. The 7 nights ahead will be the most important week of your life. Each session will deepen the neural rewiring, strengthen your connection to the creation orbital, and accelerate the manifestation of your chosen reality. By day 7, you won't just believe in the technique, you'll have become living proof of its power. But here's what separates those who achieve extraordinary results from those who just try the technique once and give up: consistency and community. The most successful practitioners don't just do their repetitions in isolation, they connect with others who understand this level of consciousness work. They share their experiences, learn from each other's breakthroughs, and create a collective field of elevated possibility that amplifies everyone's results. That's why your next step is crucial. If this video has opened your mind to possibilities you never knew existed, if you're ready to join the ranks of those who consciously create their reality rather than just react to circumstances, then you need to take action right now. Hit that subscribe button, because this is just the beginning of the most advanced consciousness training you'll ever receive. I'm constantly researching the latest breakthroughs in neuroscience, quantum physics, and consciousness studies to bring you cutting-edge techniques that most people won't discover for years. When you subscribe, you're joining an exclusive community of reality creators who refuse to accept limitation as permanent. Smash that like button if you're committed to applying this technique starting tonight. Your like isn't just appreciation, it's a declaration to the universe that you're ready to step into your power as a conscious creator. It's also a signal to the algorithm to show this life-changing information to others who need it. Every like helps us reach someone who's been searching for exactly this knowledge. Drop a comment below sharing what you're going to manifest using the 100 repetition technique. When you publicly declare your intention, you're activating what scientists call social accountability. Your brain literally rewires itself to follow through on commitments you make in front of others. Plus, when you share your chosen affirmation, you're contributing to the collective field of manifestation energy that supports everyone in this community. But most importantly, hit that notification bell so you never miss the advanced techniques I'm releasing. I'm working on breaking down even more forbidden knowledge that combines ancient wisdom with modern science, techniques for remote viewing, timeline shifting, and quantum manifestation that will blow your mind. These aren't theories or wishful thinking, they're practical methods based on decades of suppressed research that actually work. Your transformation starts the moment you decide it does. The universe is waiting for your signal that you're ready to step into the reality where your deepest desires are already fulfilled. The 100 repetition technique is that signal. Tonight you begin broadcasting a new frequency to the quantum field of infinite possibilities. The only question remaining is, what reality will you choose to create? Subscribe now, like this video, comment your manifestation below, and ring that notification bell. Your future self is counting on the decision you make in the next 10 seconds. Welcome to your new reality. The transformation begins now.